Welcome to the Elevating Funeral Service podcast. If you want to run a successful funeral home, cemetery, or pet cremation service, you don't have to be the one that has the lowest price. You do need to be the one that offers the most value, provides the best customer experience, and clearly communicates that in your marketing. On this weekly podcast, Ellery and Welton will show easy ways to demonstrate value to families and create differentiation that helps you stand out from the competition. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Elevating Funeral Service. I'm Ellery Bowker. I'm with my co-host and good friend, Welton Hong, and this is the podcast where we talk about ways to grow your funeral home. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can add authority to your website in a couple different ways, but by just adding a blog onto the website. So every funeral home out there has a funeral home website. Some have blogs on them, some don't. I want to kind of just dispel one quick myth is that a blog is not a diary, right? I think a lot of times when people think about blogs, they think about people just writing about, their passion of raising, urban chickens and that sort of stuff. But for the context of this podcast, I want you to be thinking about a blog as just an article repository. So just a place to write articles that are going to be found by people looking for that. And just kind of think about it like that. So just kind of a bank of articles. Mm-hmm. So Welton, you and I talked about this. Let's first talk about kind of why a funeral home needs to kind of be the authority for Google and for the consumer.
Right. I think for the consumer, it's pretty obvious that you can actually leverage the blog to establish yourself as the industry leader, right? You can use it to build trust, establish the cloud in your industry and become the go-to resources for anything to do. For example, if you're big on, let's say, cremation, aquamation, green burial, you can really build the authority in your local market.
Just by putting content out there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. And then, so how does it help? How does Google benefit? How does Google benefit you by having a blog?
Definitely. So now let's switch gear and talk about trust with Google, which is also the byproduct of this. And I always say when you're writing content for your website, the main frame of mind is not to write it for the search engine. That's the byproduct. Right? The main reason for having a blog is to build authority first with the potential families, or to build authority, or even for existing families to build authority with them. But the byproduct is where the fruit comes in, is the search engine optimization. Google loves content. Google loves freshness of content, right? And Google comes to index your website on a regular basis. So whenever you have fresh, original, again, has to be original content.
Right.
You cannot be swiping somebody else's content.
Right.
It has to be original content that's not out there.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And Google loves these type of content to build authority. And in the good old days, there's something called page rank. So each page on your website, the website as a whole has a page rank. Mm-hmm. And page rank is just the authority of your website. How authoritative is your website? And used to be a scale from 0 to 10. If you're a 10, that means you're super authoritative in your industry, in your local market. So that's why it's a very, Google loves content, and the content that you typically write are going to be a little bit more catered to, for example, city-based content, because you want to tell Google you're the authority in your local market. And anything, again, just to do with niche things that you do differently.
Yeah. One way I heard it explained, and I thought it was a great way to put it. I heard that Google is don't think of it as a search engine, think of it as an answer engine, right? Like you ask it questions, and Google's entire existence is dependent upon them delivering you the right results. Right. So you're helping Google, right? Mm-hmm. So if someone's coming looking for funeral information or whatever, let's say that you are you like VW Beetles and you have a website that's just got everything to do with VW Beetles, you're making it easy for Google to say to that searcher, hey, go to this website. They're the authority, right? And if Google doesn't do that, then we end up using Yahoo or Bing or somewhere else, right? So Google needs you to do that because you help them do that, right? And it just makes for a better customer experience. I also think too, when we talk about kind of the article bank, here's the way I think about it. You know, I don't think there's many things that beget more questions than planning a funeral if you've never done it, right? So you can look at the search volume, and I look at it, and you can see the queries that are being typed in, like, you know, how do I do this, and how much does a funeral cost, and how to save money on the funeral, all this other stuff. And if you just write an article, title it whatever you think that question is, and then answer it like you would answer it if somebody was sitting in front of you. Just, you don't have to be John Grisham. Just write it out as you would speak it to somebody, and then put it on there, and Google will index that. And the next time somebody near you types in, how do I do this? If you have a page, and a blog is a page on your website with that title, Google's going to say, okay, bingo, right? I mean, ding, 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 ding. You know, you're helping Google that. And so the more pages, right, the more content you put on that site, and just put it in that bank, even if no one ever goes to your site and drills down to that page, it doesn't matter, because if somebody asks it, Google will send them directly to that page.
Right. Ellery brought a good point. Not too many people will go on a funeral home and then actually get entrenched and keep coming back and look at their blogs. But it's those blog content that get indexed by Google whenever they're searching for, let's say, acclamation in your local market. Your website will come up right at the top. That blog page will show up right at the top.
Yeah. It's to me, I think it's an overlooked tool for funeral homes, and it's really, really easy to do, because the content we're talking about is the same content that they would just talk to somebody, right? If somebody asked them a question in person, they're going to answer that. So they can just answer it, you know, bank that article, put it in the bank, and just wait. And someday someone's going to type in something that Google's going to say, go to this page because this guy has the answer. And also too, without getting, you know, down too big of a rabbit trail here, if you're paying for your ads, right, the quality of that website they go to, right, the authoritative part of that website helps you actually reduce the cost. So you could pay less than somebody and rank higher than them on with PPC. So is that do I understand that correctly?
True. The whole authority of the website.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do this then. Okay. So a funeral home should have a blog, right? They should just be adding pages to it regularly. Now, this is not a social media post. This is an article. Think about a blog as an article. They should be adding articles all the time. The technical part of this, getting a website provider to add a blog, is not a problem, right? They can just add one on there, no problem. And they should be willing to do that for you. And then, so how do they get started writing? Well, and what are some of the options? Because a lot of people say, well, look, I can't write, you know?
So what I would suggest, if you're a good writer and you're looking for inspiration on what to write about subjects wise, there's a pretty nifty tool called ubersuggest.com. ubersuggest.com. Once you go on there, you can just type in, for example, funeral homes. It'll give you a lot of content, what people are searching about the funeral industry. Then from there, you can write content around that subject matter. And that way you have a lot of content you can write about.
Right. And Ubersuggest is showing you what people search for.
Yeah, search for, and also in a question format. So there's two types. One is the keyword search terms people are searching for. And also the other section, Ubersuggest, they also show you the questions people are looking for.
Cool. I know that site. I hadn't thought about that. My thought was, if I was a funeral home owner and I was going to create a blog, my thought would be, I would just try to just lead with empathy and say, okay, you know, if I'm a family that's never planned a funeral before, what questions do I have? Right. If I'm a veteran and I want to pre-plan, what questions do I have? And sort of start with the question in mind and say, you know, if you think about what article to write, just write down every question you've ever been asked. And there's an article for each one of those, you know? And so it's instead of trying to dream up a page and all that, just what questions do you get asked? Right. And then do that. I'll give you an example. One thing I see all the time is people that have a veteran in the family will ask, you know, how do you qualify to be buried in a veteran cemetery, or maybe like Arlington? And so what if a funeral home just had an article on their blog that said how to qualify to be interred at Arlington National Cemetery?
That's right.
and then
Yeah.
people are going to say, how do you get to be in Arlington? And then
Yeah.
boom, and so
Right.
again, you're just banking that, and you're really just kind of just put that content out there so Google can help that searcher.
Right. Ellery and I did a podcast before on about FAQ,
Mm-hmm.
and that would also be a good format for blogs. And the most popular search term in a question format is what to wear to a funeral.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have that content on your website, right, that's also
It'll be a hit.
right.
It'll be a match.
Right. And second most popular is how much do funeral cost?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, you don't need to reveal exact cost on there. But again, that's what's going on in families' mind is, hey, how much is it?
Yeah.
They're looking for a ballpark.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Right.
I've always been an advocate for having a funeral home have something on their website that
Uh-huh.
says, looking for funeral prices, and
Right.
then they click on that. Or even a little bit more ballsy, if you would be if a funeral home had an article that was titled "How to Save Money on a Funeral," because people search that term.
I love
And
that.
so what if you had a page on there and then you told them how they could save money? Now, it doesn't mean
Right.
everyone's going to go for the lowest price,
Nope.
but here's my thinking. If I'm the consumer and
Mm-hmm.
I type in how to save money on a funeral, and I go to the Funeral Consumers Alliance or I go to ARP, I'm going to hear all the groups that don't like us very
Yep.
much.
Yep.
But
Be
what if I
negative.
hit the local funeral home? What
Mhm.
if Google put me at the local funeral home? They sent me to that website, and that
Right.
local funeral home is now telling me how to save money on a funeral. I'm instantly going to trust that
Love,
funeral home.
love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You're instantly going to bond with them because they're taking the barriers down, right? They're understanding what I need. So,
Right.
okay. So the funeral director the funeral owner has a lot of knowledge. They're going to write all these articles, but they don't like to write. So you could literally just have a ghostwriter, right? Just find somebody who
Yeah.
likes to write.
Oh yeah.
You could throw the question up, you could just
Mhm.
speak it, and then they could
Right.
frame it all out.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, Welton, what about this? What about like length? What's a word count?
Right. So interesting. There's really no rule of thumb to the exact word count, but typically from a search engine optimization point of view, will be more than 500 word count. Like three paragraphs type of deal.
Right.
And 500 word count is not too few and not
Right.
a whole lot. So it's easy to digest as well.
Right.
So
Right.
typically
Right.
500 or more is more or less the default most people
Right.
go with.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Google doesn't like thin content.
No.
No. Yeah.
Right.
I remember years ago. I don't know if you remember back in 2011 when they did that Panda update. If you
Yes.
remember that, and they
Right.
all kinds of websites just were gone because they had these
Right.
really thin pages. They
Very
called them. It
thin.
was just like
Yeah.
one paragraph,
Right.
just trying to rank for that
Right.
term. And then I think the last thing we would probably say is if you write the articles, you can use that as a piece of content for your social media.
Love that. You can distribute it via social media.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And drive traffic to your website.
Yeah, you can drive traffic to your website. You're going to be educating the consumer, right? So if you're putting out an article once a week on Facebook about how to do this or how to do that,
Right.
you're going to become the authority just because you're the
Definitely.
only one teaching,
Mhm.
right, in the area. No one else is teaching. They're all putting up
Right.
inspirational quotes or
Yes.
obituaries, and you're going to be the one that's actually going to be helping them by giving them good content and good knowledge. So,
Definitely.
I've done some blogs before. I've done a lot of content marketing before, and I've seen it work
Right.
firsthand. I would probably just my one tip would be is that it's kind of like a crop. You have to fertilize it and water it and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, even if you don't see any fruits from it, because the fruits will come later. And when
Right.
they'll come by the wheelbarrow. I mean, you'll get a
Right.
lot later, but you have to be able to work through that and work, even though you're not seeing any results, just keep putting those out there. And then one day you're going to see, wow, I've got 50 articles here and
Right.
I'm getting ranked for these, and
Yes.
people are coming to it because I have what they're looking for specifically. But
Right.
I think so. My tip is just stick with it. Don't stop doing that. A lot of people get inspired to make a blog
Mhm.
and they do 2 articles
Right.
and then it's just dead.
Right.
You know,
Just like social media. So you still
just like
have
social
to
media.
have that consistency element of doing this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we got a
Absolutely.
quick tip if you don't like writing.
Hmm.
There's a this is our little secret here.
Hmm.
But if you go to the Craigslist
Hmm.
for New York City, so you go
Okay.
to New York City's Craigslist and then post there. There's a
Hmm.
lot of unfortunately starving
Right. Sure.
journalist in New York. And that's kind of like the standard format. People go there to look up writers.
Right.
And that's a great place. You can find very, very high quality, high caliber,
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very good writers there.
Yeah. And they don't need to know the funeral business. They're just going to listen to what you say, and they're
Right.
going to frame it out into
Right.
a readable
Right.
article. Because too, in a blog, it's not just the words, it's like formatting, right?
Right.
Spacing. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of, is the blog scannable, readable? You don't want just a wall of text,
No.
because people are just going to, they're just going to turn and run on
Right.
that. So, well, awesome. Well, and this was kind of a short episode, but, we were
Okay.
talking about how to build authority. And for the listeners, we're going to have a couple more episodes on how to build authority, because
Right.
at the end of the day, if you want to be the number one funeral home in your market, you have to be the number one teaching funeral home in the market, right? You have to educate your consumers. And I don't mean with a paragraph on your website. You have to consistently put out that content and literally tell them you're the authority. They'll see it,
Right.
but you have to tell them you're the
Yes.
authority, and then back that up by continuing to put out that content. So,
Right.
any last thoughts, Weldon?
No, it's perfect.
Okay.
Start blogging.
Yeah, start blogging away. And if we can help you with anything, reach out to Welton or myself, and we'll be happy to lend a hand or give you some advice or point you in the right direction. So again, thank everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week. See ya.
Bye.